CrossFit can do it, you can do it. So today I want to talk about using HIIT, H-I-I-T, for your business. So essentially about using selective intensity to rapidly improve. So as many of you know, for many years now, I've had a regular workout program. So the program changes over time, but I rarely go for long periods of time without working on some type of program. So for a long time, call it 3 years or so, I was training for the Leadville 100 mountain bike race. Before that, I used to train for marathons and half marathons, and in between somewhere, I picked up other workout programs like CrossFit, powerlifting, whatever it might be. I've even picked up stuff recently for dirt biking. And right now, I'm on a dirt bike specific training program that also includes daily strength training with my wife Sabrina, as well as some dirt biking, some mountain biking, etc. So I've always had a training program for fitness of some sort. And after many, many years of training for one thing or another, there is a specific type of training that I found created and creates greater results over time in my fitness called high intensity interval training, or HIIT. So HIIT, and many of you may have heard about this. It's been really in vogue lately, in particular in kind of CrossFit circles. But HIIT is basically a training technique in which you give all out, 100% effort through quick, intense bursts of exercise, followed by periods of sometimes short periods, but sometimes active periods of recovery. So little tiny period of intense work, and sometimes that could be as little as 20 or 30 seconds or maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and then a longer break. And the break on a 30-second interval might be a minute, and the break on a 4-minute interval might be 15 minutes. So essentially, what happens is this type of training helps you keep your heart rate up and burn fat in less time, and it adds these stressors to your body that work on a reflex around getting better and stretching, and then coming back into a settled state to rest, and it allows the muscles to build, allows the intensity to build. So there's a guy named Eric Salvador that wrote about this in a cool article, and I'll see if I can link it, but he was the head instructor at a place called the Fitting Room, and he said, a high-intensity workout increases the body's need for oxygen during the effort and creates an oxygen shortage, causing your body to ask for more oxygen during recovery. So this is what he calls an afterburn effect. And so this afterburn effect is referred to as excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, so EPOC. And it's the reason why intense exercise will help burn more fat and calories and actually grow more muscle and stamina and endurance than just regular go grind it out aerobic and steady state workouts. Okay, so here is what, I'll put a graphic up. Here is what a typical interval training session should look like. So it would start with, so you got intensity on the y-axis, time on the x-axis. So essentially it would start with a warm-up where we're ramping into a period of intense action. And then the big stick there, right, is that short burst of intensity. So it's a short burst that's more intense than you could do at a steady pace. So we're really stretching the system a bit. And then we're backing down into a rest period. And then stretching again, backing down, stretching, backing down, stretching, backing down. We're doing that over and over again, and then going through a cool down period after that. And I'll explain to you how I think we can relate this to business here in a little bit. But I just wanted to give you a sense as to what high-intensity training would look like. So again, I'll go deeper on that in a little bit. So, all right, intensity training. So when I trained for the Leadville 100, this 100-mile mountain bike race at 10,200 feet elevation, etc., nearly 75% of my total training was in short, interval-based stuff. Generally less than an hour at a time, but occasionally 90 minutes. So now bear in mind that this race takes 9, 10, 11, 12 hours. So you'd think that in order to finish a 100-mile race, that I would have to spend insane amounts of my time just riding my bike. And don't get me wrong, I did some of that, but not as much as I thought. That's what I thought when I started training. Man, I must have to spend all this amount of time and just ride my bike in order to get better. But in general, the opposite proved to be true, and it proves to be true for lots of athletes. So my coach that I worked with insisted that short, focused intensity done with consistency over time, meaning some form of plan to it, as well as some regimented rest, if not even complete breaks, was the way to go. So you guys have heard me talk about Shoshin before, the Buddhist idea of becoming a beginner. So when I was training for this, I just became Shoshin, right? I just became the beginner, and I just obeyed and I pressed forward. So while I had some very long days on the bike during training, okay, there were definitely some 6 hours or 9 hour days where I had to kind of test my body. But those days were few and far between. They were designed more to shake down my nutrition plan, help with my mental endurance, maybe even get my rear end into shape to ride the bike. But they were more focused on mental endurance, more focused on nutrition than they were on my performance on the bike. And so what was the result of that? Well, here's the result, and I talk about it a lot, but I finished one of the world's hardest mountain bike races in 10 hours, 13 minutes, and 54 seconds. Now, that's not a sub-9 hour like some of these crazy folks do, but it's way less than 12, which is what it takes to get that little buckle, right? And it was well below my targeted time of 11 hours. In fact, I am slightly ashamed to say that after I finished this race, which was a big lead up for me, right, a big deal, I still had quite a bit in the tank. So I suspect that I could have done the race quite a bit faster. So all of this, in my mind, was due to using intervals as my primary training modality. So here's a few reasons it works in the fitness world, and then we'll talk about how to translate that to business. So number one is extra free time. Interval training is absolutely the most efficient form of cardio. It can deliver benefits that happen much more quickly than your typical cardio workouts. In fact, a lot of the research shows that 27 minutes of HIIT performed 3 times per week delivers the same aerobic and anaerobic results as 60 minutes of regular cardio performed 5 times per week. So the amount of time we can save doing this is immense. Okay, so it also can help us get in shape more quickly. In a study that was done in 2011, a mere 2 weeks of high intensity intervals can improve your aerobic capacity as much as 6 to 8 weeks of traditional endurance training. So if I stopped there just on point number one, I think that's a compelling enough reason to do this type of training, and I'll explain how I think that works in business in a bit. Number two is more calories burned. So in terms of weight loss, intervals are much more effective than slow endurance exercise. The intense effort you put in means that your body has to work harder to recover, so that you'll burn more calories in the 24 hours after an interval workout than you would after a slow, steady workout. So during those 24 hours after high-intensity interval training, your body can produce up to about 450 or 500% more HGH, human growth hormone, which can increase the caloric burn and even slow down the aging process. So again, efficient, better results. Not efficient, same results, or efficient, slightly less, efficient, better results. The third reason is a healthier heart. So although high-intensity intervals accelerate your heart rate, HIIT can actually decrease the strain on your heart. So here's what happens. Over time, the amount of blood that your heart pumps per beat can increase. So basically, cardiovascular exercise can increase your heart stroke volume, the amount of blood that your heart pumps per beat. So interval training maximizes cardiovascular benefits, so it can quickly increase stroke volume, meaning the intensity, how much blood is going through your vessels when your heart beats. So this makes your heart stronger, makes it more efficient. And it also maximizes the other benefits of any other cardiovascular exercise, including decreasing your risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, etc. So some real positives on the health front. And the final, and this is the one that I think probably relates most to business as a benefit, is increased speed and endurance. So interval training stimulates several physiological changes that can lead to greater speed and stamina. For example, HIIT helps your body learn to burn lactic acid more efficiently, which allows you to exercise for a longer period of time before fatigue sets in. And interval training makes it easier to go further and faster with more energy, And it's also going to help with your other activities, including hiking, biking, swimming, skiing, etc. So you can see in business, if we can go farther and faster and keep more energy, that's a huge benefit for us, not only in fitness but in business. So there's the 4 things that I think are really benefits of HIIT in fitness. Extra free time, more calories burned, more efficiency there, healthier heart, and increased speed and endurance. So how do we apply this method to business? One of the things that I have come to firmly believe, whether it's true or not, is that willpower is finite. That is to say, as we use willpower, it depletes over time and then completely disappears. A period of rest or less intense action is then required to restore willpower to a usable level. So this theory is called ego depletion. You can look it up. It's somewhat controversial, but I believe it. Interestingly, though, I also believe that we actually have more willpower than we'll ever use, but that the process of continuously tapping into that willpower is a really inefficient use of our time and energy. So in business, what I think this means is that in order to have sustained success over time, it may be advisable to create intentional periods of high intensity followed by intentional periods of lower intensity. Instead of regarding the periods of high intensity as good and the low intensity as bad, we're going to simply avoid labeling them all together. And the high and low periods are going to work together to create consistent performance over time. Okay? So here's an example. When I was writing a newsletter, I used to write a newsletter called Small Biz Profit Builders. And I would generally write that letter to my subscribers in one 12 to 15-hour sitting each month. So basically, it was just a very intense single period in and of itself. Now, using traditional measurements, that might seem ridiculous to write a 16 to 20-page document in 12 hours. I mean, why not write a little bit each day, right? Aren't I procrastinating, etc.? I guess some might suggest that, but let's break down that process that I used in writing the newsletter using HIIT methodology. So, first step, and maybe I'll put the graph up again, but is the warm-up. So the warm-up is research time for me. So each month I was thinking about what I wanted to write about, and I would do a good amount of research on the topics. So that activity is generally low intensity, but as I got closer to knowing what I wanted to write about, the intensity would increase until at some point I open up my Google Docs and I start writing. So then here's what I would do. High intensity period 1. This is where I create the document itself. I open up Google Docs, I set up the formatting on the document, I write the titles of the articles, and I'll throw a quick outline under a few of the titles to help me remember what I want to write about. So that's number 1. Then low intensity. Now, second, low intensity. I get myself a cup of coffee, seltzer water, turn on the space heater in my office, or turn on some music that helps me concentrate. And maybe I'll put on some comfy wool socks or whatever, and I'll just sit with my computer in my lap. That's low intensity. Then it goes a little bit like this. High intensity period 2 is article number 1. That's the tough session for me, though, man. Writing the first article was always a bit of a grind. So I think that because my fingers and my brain were just getting used to the idea that I was actually doing this, it was hard for me. So the music was on, my fingers were moving, my brain became fully engaged. Got that done, or at least roughed in. Low intensity next period. Get a snack, stretch. Once that first article is done, I generally feel like I can take a few minutes to get up, reset my body and brain, and refuel for the next push. Then I go to high intensity period number 3, which is articles 2 and 3. So these articles generally come a little bit easier for me, so I'm in the flow. There's a huge benefit. This is one of those huge benefits of intervals is after the first high intensity period that might seem a little hard, everything else seems to come easier. Then I go into low intensity period number 3, so I play with the dogs, or I hang out with Sabrina, or I go for a short bike ride. This is a longer period, okay? So maybe it's a couple of hours. I need the time to allow for a reset. And in this period, I'm just really prepping my brain and my mood for a final push. Then in high intensity period number 4 is kind of the final article, or our final article. So this period is often the best. I'm totally in flow. I'm effortlessly putting my thoughts on paper. The last article takes me literally half the time, or maybe even less than the first one took me. Then I go into the final low intensity period, which is personal editing and preparing the document for Ashley to edit. She's awesome. She probably wishes I would edit and prepare a little more intensely, but I go through that. And then I send the issue to Ashley, get her to set it up, get it ready to send to the printer, and set up the envelopes and labels, etc., and send the newsletter. And that's my cool down. So that's an example of using intervals for a single project. And you can see how it would work. Periods of high intensity with low intensity make it so that my high intensity periods are much more productive. Okay, so I go through the process a few times over and over again and break it into sprints. So, but in my work, I often encourage my clients to consider completing an entire year of work using the same methodology. So basically, by breaking the year into sprint periods and jog periods, we're able to accomplish much more than using the traditional model of just keep going. So instead of kind of annualized thinking, where we think of everything in terms of what we can accomplish in 1 year, I encourage them to break the year down into smaller chunks, call it 3 months, and generally to treat each of those periods as a year in terms of productivity. And then inside of that year, then we find periods of intensity, and then on the outside of each of those, we take a break. This is basically a modification of Brian Moran's 12-week year method, and you can find that on my reading list and pick that up. But essentially, we're viewing each 3-month period as its own separate and disconnected period, i.e., it's not connected to the rest of the year necessarily, and it has lots of advantages doing this. Number one is it concentrates our intensity. So instead of stretching out activities over long periods of time, these short sprint periods allow us to use willpower to our greatest advantage. And again, I believe it's finite, so we want to use it and get some rest. And the way to do that is to do it in shorter bursts. Number two, it allows us to see the fruits of our labors sooner. So annual goals or 5-year plans or 10-year plans require lots of waiting. 3-month goals are here before we know it. So if we focus on these 90-day periods versus 360-day periods, all of a sudden we're accomplishing things, and that momentum continues to build. The third benefit is that we make mistakes faster and we change directions faster. Okay, so if we see that we're headed the wrong direction or we make a mistake, we can change that before we're too far down the road. Okay, so here is a method that I think you can use for creating interval-based performance in your company. Okay, now here's the thing. It's simple, okay? Don't spend too much time overcomplicating it or thinking it's too easy. It is simple, but it can be very challenging. So just try to keep it simple, stupid brain on and listen up, and here's how it goes. Number one, cast a vision, okay? Start thinking about 4 areas to improve in your business in the next 3 months, but not in a traditional way. Ask yourself this question when considering each area. What is the one thing related to this area that if I accomplished it in the next 3 months would most significantly impact my happiness and success? And I want you to write down why this would make you happy. Number 2, I want you to write some goals. I want you to write a strong goal around each of your 4 areas. You can use the SMART goal method, not my favorite. You can read about that in other articles or watch other videos. I've talked about setting better goals. But write yourself a strong goal, something that matters. There's no need to overthink it. Just write some goals. The next piece is to create actions. So I want you to write 3 actions you can take on a weekly basis to accomplish each one of those goals. And I want you to be specific. And each of those actions should be slightly terrifying to you. It should be a little bit scary. Fourth thing is I want you to implement tracking. So I want you to create a tracking form. You can look at my 12-week year model, which I think works really well, but create a tracking form for your weekly actions. So my preference would be a spreadsheet where you can track weekly progress. Fifth step, get accountable. Now, I want you to share that tracking form with a person or persons who will hold you accountable for your promises. So that could be a colleague, it could be a boss, it could be your spouse, but each week you want to hold an update meeting with them and encourage them to be hard on you. You want to actually accomplish the goal. So encourage them to not let yourself off the hook. 6 pieces, at the end of the 3 months, I want you to take a break. I want you to take a break from the strong intensity, okay? But put a time frame on it, a week, a month, whatever it might be. It doesn't matter as long as there's a commitment to implement a new 3-month plan as soon as that break is over. And the seventh step, just like in shampoo, is rinse and repeat. All right? Pretty simple method there, but I hope through this video I've given you some reasons to consider implementing interval training in your business. It's not hard. The challenging part is doing it consistently. So if you fall off the wagon, okay, just get back on and keep going. Don't quit. That's it. Simple, repeatable, 3-month interval training for your business. It's guaranteed to create stronger, more meaningful, and faster results for you and your business. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.